I tried making a Poison Flay build with a Primordial Dagger with insane penetration and skill level stats. Is Poison Flay a hidden gem or disposable toxic waste? Let's find out. Ever since Flay was revealed for Season 3, I immediately pictured myself dancing through the battlefield with poisonous strikes making every enemy in sight wither away like an unattended houseflower. But then I woke up from my daydream, back to reality. Because last time I checked the patch notes, they didn't touch poison, did they? Nope. It's still at its underwhelming base damage compared to other ailment types. But even then, I couldn't let go of poison. Something about it just appeals to me, and I refused to give up on it. So I got back on the poison horse and thought to myself that this time the devs had introduced a skill built for properly scaling poison damage. But little did I know that I was in for the ride of my life. Before diving headfirst into the shallow rocky poison water, I thought I'd have a look at the Flay poison landscape, and boy was it bleak. A couple of builds here and there, but they didn't seem to scale well from 300 corruption and beyond. And as always, their meta-critical strike build siblings overshadowed them. Wow, what was I about to get myself into? But then again, exploring the non-meta is, well, my thing. So I decided to take a bullet for the community and created a new Acolyte character, eventually morphing into a Lich. And this time I decided to go all out on a melee ailment build from the start, similar to the final Flay poison build I was going for. So from the start, I spec'd to harvest with as much poison and bleed chance I could find. Got this bad boy of a sword carrying me through most of the early campaign, and the Viper Tail belt with the chance to poison on hit and melee attack speed being available from this early on is almost a cheat code. But I said thank you very much and continued slashing my way through the early levels. And pretty early on, the single target damage was already, well, acceptable at least. At level 15, I went with the awesome leveling gloves fighting chance and slammed the melee attack speed legendary stat on them. Even got bold enough to take on an early Rift Beast. No trouble. At level 20, I spec'd it to Reperform, and this is where the build really started to take off. And you see the skeletons here? Well, I summoned one every 10 seconds to get the 20% increased attack speed from the Dark Rituals passive node, where the stats of the node also applied to me for 10 seconds if I had used the minion skill in that time frame. Awesome. Oh, and before I forget, I now use this little rascal too, Taste of Blood, with bleed chance, bleed duration and double bleed speed. And yeah, I made it unfair by adding the insane physical damage and melee attack speed onto it as well. At this point, I could do the campaign with my eyes closed. And I didn't stop there. Why not throw some Ignite into the mix? I took 2 of my Sun Wreath rings rotting away in my stash, slammed onto a couple of legendary stats and got rolling. And the Durance Wisdom body armor didn't make it any worse, especially with the bleed chance legendary stat. So yeah, safe to say, at this point I was way overpowered. But the real shift came at level 35 when Aura of Decay was unlocked. My oh my, I have a love-hate relationship with this skill. It's an absolute must for Acolyte poison builds, but it's a pain to scale properly while also sustaining our own character's health pool. Well, more on that later. At this stage I hit around 100 ailment stacks on enemies, and they were simply decaying at incredible rates before my eyes. I was unstoppable, untouchable, but I was soon to be humbled. Now if you want me to make a build guide video of the final build I ended up with, let me know by dropping a comment below saying I want the final build. I eventually unlocked the Holy Grail, Flay. My first time ever trying out the skill, and boy did it feel nice. The spirit step motion felt so smooth and the clear speed was through the roof. This was exactly what I had dreamt about. Dancing through the battlefield with clinical precision of poison strikes everywhere, and enemies withering faster than I could blink. The combination of Reperform and Flay was awesome, especially with the increased poison chance and attack speed nodes of Reperform. Chapter 9 was a breeze. The temple rooftops felt like a campaign tutorial, and going into Act 10 I was full of confidence, taking the breathtaking scenery of the ancient era once more. But I was soon to notice a major flaw in the setup. Flay is mana heavy, and my mana pool was struggling to keep up with my ever-increasing attack speed. Something had to be done. So I came up with an unorthodox idea. What if I spec'd into Summon Skeleton and a node for 50 mana gain on Skeleton Death? That would definitely solve my mana issues. But there was only one problem. The skeletons would need to die somehow for it to trigger. And then a revelation came to me. How about I recruit a skeleton mage that can sacrifice the skeletons with a Profane Ablation skill? That would do the trick. So I switched to the setup, and the skeletons constantly being blown up by the skeletal archmage gave me more than enough mana sustain. I carried this setup through all the way to the early endgame with no issues whatsoever. Poison stacks, check. Mobility, check. A brutal, merciless way to sustain mana, double check. Everything was flowing and smooth, and I was really enjoying my time. But it was too good to be true. As I progressed, the skeleton mage couldn't keep up with my speed, and the skeletons weren't even sacrificed before I had already wiped enemy packs. The mana sustain didn't work anymore, and I knew deep inside that the skeleton mage would never make it at higher corruption levels. I wasn't a necromancer, and I couldn't pour enough life into it for it to handle the force of highly corrupted monsters. So I switched again. I threw out the mage and skeletons and went for transplant. I specced into its powerful node, giving up to 30 mana on use. I applied bone curses to enemies on hit, specced into 2 curses on hit for Flay, and 5 points in the Warlock passive node giving a chance to gain mana on hit per curse on the enemy. Suddenly I was getting a lot of mana on hit, and whenever I needed a batch load of mana, a simple transplant use was enough. I felt so good I even treated myself to a visual makeover with some armor skins and a fancy skill effect for Aura of Decay. I was pumped and felt better than ever, and I cleared echo by echo with ease. I tore through enemy packs like a warm knife through butter, but deep inside I knew where I was. 100 corruption. On a good day, even my grandma would handle this level, and I knew the current setup was nowhere near being able to sustain higher corruption. Something had to be done, something radical. I had set out to make poison great again, and I couldn't let myself down, my people down. I hadn't gotten this far to give up. So I trained. I knew I would have to sacrifice every part of me to make this work, even putting my own life in jeopardy. So I made Aura of Decay so powerful that it would stack hundreds of poisons within seconds, potentially sacrificing me in the process. I got the Executioner's Tithe Axe to make Harvest give me much needed mana on hit and kill, inspecting the powerful Doom ailment with Void penetration. And then I heard whispers of an ancient poison power lingering in the Void. A power so strong even the devs couldn't keep it in check. Poison Overload. I was finally worthy of wielding it, and I learned the dark arts of inflicting my enemies with Spirit Plague to trigger that ancient power. The build was finally coming together. I felt it. And it didn't become worse by Spirit Plague giving me stacks of increased damage and bleed chance. My training was complete. I was hungry. I was ready. So I started climbing corruption to cleanse the Void from the world once and for all. Enemies didn't know what hit them. Pack after pack thrashed, shade after shade obliterated, and even the mighty Aberoth fell by my ancient primordial dagger. I ended up at over 1000 corruption and are now thinking about passing the torch to someone else. So if you are interested in me making a final build guide video, drop a comment below saying I want the final build, and hit the like and subscribe buttons to not miss out. And to see my other videos in this series, click on the video card showing on the screen.